Finished lesson 3. Let's review the content through a practice session, as we have done in the previous 2 weeks. Right? So let's go into our SpaceClaim environment and let's just choose this sketch plane along the z-axis. Yeah. And let's start off with just a polygon as an example. Yeah. If we extrude this, if we pull on this surface, right, we would end up with a hexagon, right? Now, in this week, we have covered the advanced pull. So, what do you think would happen if we select this surface and we pull along it? Well, let's see what happens. As you can see, what's happening over here is it's actually affecting the dimensions of the polygon itself. Right? So, let's do that. Yeah. What happens if, however, just zoom in, and we select this face, but we also select the edges. Let's see what happens in this scenario. Yeah. Select the edges and the surface, and we do a pull. It doesn't like it. It gives us an error. It's because we might have been over constrained. But let us, as an example, if we go back a few steps over here, back to our drawing, yeah, let's, you know what, let's mimic this drawing over here. Let's try to copy this polygon, yeah, all the way down, yeah. Let's do that, and if we just get rid of this polygon, yeah, so pretty much what we have over here, yeah, is the same concept. However, if we look in our structure tree, we've constructed it out of several lines instead of one whole polygon, right? Now if we pull on this surface up, we've ended up with a similar shape. However, what happens if we try to pull on this surface now? As you can see, it doesn't enlarge the whole shape. It actually extrapolates these edges into a corner, right? Previously, when we created a whole polygon, yeah, I'm going to explain why we have a difference. It's mostly because of a difference of our starting structure, yeah, our initial sketch, yeah. This is why, right, we might have a similar geometry over here, but if we don't know the initial steps that were used to create the initial parameters, all the relationships, we might not be able to use some of the advanced tools such as the advanced pull option effectively, because it might give us some results that we don't quite understand or that we can't quite predict. Yeah, it gives us something that we don't expect. In this situation, yeah, because I didn't start from a whole polygon, it doesn't have all of those relationships. So when I use an advanced pull over here on this surface, SpaceClaim tries to just extrapolate along the previous lines that were drawn, yeah, from the shape. So out of this hexagon, we can end up with a triangular prism, right? If we extrapolate it. can make this triangle bigger and larger. Yeah, this is just some practice using the advanced pull. Right? So let's get rid of this. Let's go back onto Sketch. Let's have a bit of practice using the sweep pull. Right? Let's just zoom in a bit. Let's try to create, you know what? Let's start with another polygon again. Yeah, because we haven't used the polygon tool that much. Let's try to start with that. Let's try to put a point over here. Select the point. Let's try to create a plane. Yeah. Trying to create a plane. No, I want to create a plane off of this point. Doesn't like that. How's about if we add a little construction line over here? Does it want to create a plane on there? Nope. There we go. Now it wants to. Let's get rid of that. Now it wants to create a plane. Okay. Now that we have our plane, we can exit that. Yeah, there we go. Perfecto. Now that we have our sketch plane on here, we can zoom in and let's try to create, let's say, just a circle. Or if we wanted to, we could create, I guess, another polygon. See that? Well, let's give this, instead of 6 sides, let's give it 9 sides. Just as an example, just to play around with it. Now if we go to pull, we can select this surface. Yeah. We can select the sweep pull that we just covered in this section. Now we have to select the curve. Yeah. Select here, here. Let's select all the edges of our original hexagon. And would you look at that? If we do the sweep pull, it will follow the edges of our original sketch, of our original polygon, sort of follow along and, you know, adjust the edges, extrapolate the edges over here into a joint and go along the curve itself. Right? Obviously we covered this in the main body of the course, but however, just giving you a few more additional examples for you to practice with. Obviously you can find your own examples and test cases. Yeah, you can play around with. Let's go back to our initial drawing over here. Yeah. Let's try something else. Let's try to do a circle this time around. I think the hardest part over here is creating the correct plane for sketching. Right? Sometimes it doesn't get it quite perpendicular. You have to play around with it until you get the right plane. Yeah. Now that we have a circle, let's try to give it a different polygon over here. Yeah. instead of actually having 6 sides. Yeah, as you can see, I'm using the structure tree. Yeah, we already covered this, but the structure tree just to select which parts of my sketch or parts of my model, rather than actually selecting it in the workspace. This gives me more control over my selections. Also, I can edit the properties directly from the properties tab over here. So let's try to do a sweep pull using a triangle this time around. Yeah, we can select this, sweep. Now we just have to select the sweep path, and look at that. This is sort of if you wanted to create maybe a custom ring for a loved one, as an example, or a necklace or whatever. Some interesting designs over here. You can also, if you go back into sketch, we select our original sketch plane. Let's see what happens if we just, as an example, add a few more curves or make this a more complicated path. Yeah, let's see how SpaceClaim is able to deal with a bit more of a complicated path. Yeah, again, this is just practice. It's something for you to experiment to see how some of these tools behave in certain situations, right? The best teacher is actually experience. There we go. Let's try that. Now if we go into 3D mode, let's choose our pull tool, back to our triangular face or cross section, going on to sweep. Let's choose this edge, this edge, this edge, this edge, all of the edges that we've drawn up to now. And of course I forgot to hold down Control, so that's negated my selection. Okay, let's go back, select these edges that we've missed. Alrighty then. Now let's see if SpaceClaim is able to sort of compute this sweep path and how it actually computes it. I don't know if you can see that, but it's a tiny bit laggy for me. That's obviously because it's trying to do a lot of calculations, because obviously around the curve doesn't give me hard edges. However, when it changes from one curve or one path to another one, has to do a few calculations as to how it's going to resolve this change in direction or path, right? Because it needs to create an edge, create a joint, a surface over there. As you can see, you can create quite interesting shapes over here using this this technique. Yeah, again, your imagination is the limit in this sort of situation, right? Pretty much, obviously, you don't have to go all the way. You don't have to choose all of the sweep paths. You can also just choose certain areas or certain sections. Let's say I only wanted to use that as my sweep path. Then it automatically stops me at the end of the path, right? And then again, if you wanted to sort of clean up your sketch a bit, you could remove all of this additional helping geometry at the end once you're happy with your sketch. However, I do advise against that, because if you make a mistake or if you want to change your design later on, it's useful to have all of this additional helping geometry. So what I would personally do in this situation is I would save a different set of files. So I'd save a working file, which has all of my helping geometry or reference geometry in there that I've used to actually create the final model. And then I'd have a separate file with the final model itself, so where I remove all the additional helping geometry or reference geometry just to have a clean 3D model. Either way, as you will see when we cover it later on during the file types, when you actually save your models for 3D printing, you'll save them in a format called STL. We'll cover this later on. However, this format only saves the surface geometry that you've generated or that you've created in a very compressed format. So it won't save any of the relationships that you have. And this is important to know, because in this scenario, when you actually import an STL file into SpaceClaim, you won't have any of this helping geometry or past relationships or whatnot. You'd have to create all of those from scratch if you want to edit the model, and that can get difficult and messy. So long story short, it's good to save a couple iterations, a couple versions of the same file, just in case you need to go back and edit it. If you only have one working file and you make a mistake, or it could happen, the file might get corrupted and you don't have these backups, then you can be in a very difficult situation or a troublesome situation where you might actually have to start your work from scratch. And it's best to avoid those types of situations by having loads of backups, loads of previous files, just to show the design development. That way you have the references, you have the backups, you can always go back to previous versions of the design and work from there in case you need to. It's always better to have them and not need them than to need them and not have them. That's a little proverb over there. We did a few examples of sweep. Well, I'll give you an example, right? Let's say you were designing a tool, or you actually wanted to design an Allen key, right? If you don't know what an Allen key is, it's pretty much that little tool that you get if you've ever built some IKEA furniture. That's pretty much what an Allen key is that hexagonal cross-sectional body of a tool. See, now this time around creating the plane was much easier, right? Because it didn't have any other geometry to snap onto. So let's do this as our drawing plane. Let's just align our surface area over there. And let's say you wanted to do an Allen key of a set dimensions of a hexagon. Let's say maybe you want it to be 4 millimeter. Actually, let's make the hexagon nice and aligned. We say 4 millimeters. Okay, that can be all right. Again, choose your surface area, select sweep. We can select the sweep path. Now we can just sweep it along, and there you go. Using a few clicks, you can design your own tool, in this case an Allen key, right? So for sure, some of the designers at IKEA, they might have designed these tools in this way or in this fashion to be, supplied with the product. They might have had, instead of a straight angle over here, they might have had a sweep edge or whatnot. But, this can give you a good example of what you can do, or a different scenario or situation where you might use the sweep tool, right? Or, even looking at this, you can make a lever, a crank, a pulley, any kind of geometry similar to that. Okay. Now let's have another play around. I'm just thinking if there's any other situations where we might use the sweep tool. Let's try to create a nice little spiral if we can, just relatively simply, relatively quickly. If we can, something similar to this. So what I've done over here is I've created 3 circles for the spiral arcs, and then I've just used the tangent arc to sort of connect them together. Now I can trim away the remaining entities if it just lets me select some of them, right? Actually, if I do this last sweep arc from somewhere from here, let's say, might get a better result over there. There we go. Don't know why it's not letting me trim away that entity. Seems to not like it for some reason. The points seem to intersect, so there's no reason why it wouldn't just trim away. That's why, because let me just undo some of this geometry. The problem with this, the reason why it wasn't trimming away is because it was a complete arc, a complete circle, because when I actually put a point over here, went around to this point and continued from that point on, it didn't sort of segment the other circle or the other arc to create sort of a closed loop. You gotta give it some space, some leeway in there. And now that I've done that, it should let me cut this arc, trim away this arc, and there you go, we have a little sort of arc segment. Now let's try to create a nice little line over here, just to be able to create a plane, not that way. No, not that way. Let's try to extend this line all the way through. Okay, there we go. We managed to create that plane. Now we can enter sketch and actually select the nice little plane. And as an example, let's try to do another polygon, but this time we can edit the properties, right, of the polygon. But first we gotta select the polygon. Yeah. So number of sides, let's do 3. Let's have a triangle. Let's have a triangular spiral if we can. Now let's select this, sweep arc, this, and this lastly. And let's see if this gives us a nice or interesting, let's say, spiral effect. And it does. It does. Obviously, we can get rid of some of this, you know, just supporting geometry. So we're only left with the last solid that we've created. And you can see you've created a nice triangular spiral over here. Obviously, if you create this in 3 dimensions, you can start creating some interesting features like screw threads, but that's a bit more complex. You'd have to figure that one out by yourself once you get more experienced with using SpaceClaim. Now that we've practiced a bit more using the sweep tool, hopefully you can see a bit more practicality to it, a bit more of the things that you could achieve with it. You know, you might have some ideas flowing through your head about different designs that you could create using the sweep tool. Let's move on to practicing using the move tool a bit more. Let's just create some, again, just a quick reference geometry of a box per se with a simple hole cut through it, just for experimentation purposes. All right. That wasn't center. Let's try to make it a bit more precise, a bit more central. Take that, press cut, drag it on through. Okay. So now what we have is actually we have a nice little hole. If we select the hole and we click on the move tool, again, we get our set of axes on here. And what this allows us to do, it actually allows us to move the hole itself across the body, right? If you want to put it on the edge, you can. If you want to move it forward to this edge, you can do that as well, right? If you actually wanted to rotate the hole to give it an angle, right, to get some interesting geometry, you can do that as well. See, so actually creating a hole that's, let's say, at an angle to a surface, that could be a bit more difficult because you'd have to think in a more complicated geometrical fashion, really, to it. You might think, oh, would I be able to actually create this using an ellipse? Actually, let's do that. So we created that hole. Let's try to create a sketch plane over here, and let's say, oh, you wanted to recreate that and you wanted to use, let's say, an ellipse to create it, right? You could create something similar in shape to the entry hole, but once you get into the pull method, yeah, and you start doing that, you notice, wait, if I actually pull this, it's going to pull it along, a vertical direction, which is, you get the entry hole the same, but you don't get this, diagonal feature of it. And you might think, oh, how would I actually do that? How would I be able to recreate this hole without creating, a normal circular hole and then moving it, because you wouldn't be able to give precise dimensions when you use the move tool? There is an actual way that you can do this, right? So when you select the pull tool with the cut feature, actually one of these buttons, the same button where you go to click sweep and the same button you click to get a revolve or scale, you can actually select the pull direction, right? And if, as an example, we select this line from our previous model, it gives us, well, it should give us that angular direction, but for some reason it doesn't want to do that, but it should pull it along this line, right? Let's actually try to give it a reference, a bit of a better reference or a separate reference to that for it to go off of. Hopefully that could help, achieve what we'd like. So let's select pull again for that, cut. And we'd like to select the pull direction along this line. See, obviously it angles our pull or our sweep over there, but it seems to not really enjoy that, not really like or pull along there. It seems to pull it straight down. So a way that we can get around this is, obviously, if we define another plane sort of along this edge, or we create another line where we can create a diagonal plane. Now we'll do a live example. Can do a similar line over here and try to create a plane off of that. If it allows us to create that, right, we'll go back into 3D mode, and then when we select the plane, hopefully gives us, right, it gives us that intersecting plane. You can even, I believe, you can even move planes if you wish using the move tool, right? There we go. Just didn't select the plane for some reason. Can move it out over here. And then if we select that as our sketch plane, and then create an ellipse similar to that one that we just created. Let's try to do it. Yep. And now great. See, this is the trouble sometimes when you don't have the correct view. You might think that you're, sketching in a correct plane, but actually you're not. And that could actually get a bit messy. Okay, let's delete that plane. Let's select this plane here. Now, hopefully when we select sketch, yeah, there we go. Now the sketch plane is angled. So let's go back. Let's select our little ellipse tool. So let's try it again. Let's say we wanted to do it like that, 2 millimeters by 4 millimeters. Now when we select pull I select this surface, select cut. Now it should want to cut it along that direction diagonally, and we can get sort of, you know, analogous. Obviously I didn't mimic or measure the dimensions exactly because I just wanted, you know, for you guys to see the technique that I used. You sort of have to figure a lot of these things out as you go along, because obviously, as I mentioned previously, each design, it's a bit new. You have to think about them separately. Back to the main topic at hand, which was using the move tool. Sorry, I got a bit distracted showing a few different examples of how you can achieve some of this complicated geometry that we are doing with the move tool, but just using different tools. All right, trying to replicate some of these complex features, as you can see, it might be a bit more difficult using some of the simple tools.